You have the right to remain silent, do you understand? Anything you say may be used against you in court, do you understand? You have the right to a president attorney before and during any questions, do you understand? You cannot afford an attorney who will be appointed for you free to charge before any question you want, do you understand? Okay, so what happened?
I defended myself and I was arrested.
As he approached closer, and once I had stopped and I could actually focus on him, I noticed that he's now in his waistband gesturing. So I said, "Stop following me." When I saw him gesture is when I reached for my weapon and I pulled it.
He saw your gun and still kept coming.
Yeah.
Now you decided to take aim and fire. What were you thinking at that moment?
That I was gonna die, and I didn't want to die.
All of the officers that showed up to the scene had no idea that McCree acted in self-defense.
How long before you started hearing, like, wait a minute, they're thinking about charging me with a crime? I mean, suddenly you're the criminal here?
Eventually, an officer came in and handed me a paper, and I asked him, "What is this?" He said, "It's your charges." And that's when I saw there in bold, attempted murder, and the bail amount.
Yeah. What was your bail amount?
$2 million.
$2 million. Today I'm sitting down with Jeremy, who is a fellow USCCA member. He went through an intense self-defense situation where he was forced to use his gun to protect himself. Shortly after, he was treated like a criminal by the legal system, where he went through another battle to prove that he was innocent for saving his own life. Jeremy, I want to start right at the beginning. When did you know you were in danger? How did you get to that point? Where were you when this went down?
I was enjoying the day. It was a rainy day, and I went out on the balcony to smoke a cigarette, and I witnessed these individuals that I was familiar with in the neighborhood in that alleyway doing something that looked really suspicious to me. There was a older couple in the back of the alley that had numerous graffiti incidents, other people going into their territory. The police had been called, so I was aware of that. And when I saw the guys in the alley, I kind of took notice and still stayed like as much as I could, low key, but they noticed that I observed them, and they took offense to that. They got upset about that.
Did they start talking to you or shouting up at you or anything like that?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I stayed there with my children, my son and my 2 daughters, my wife, obviously. So it's important to me to keep them safe, and where we are safe, like, you know, observe.
And at that point, you're not anywhere near these guys. You said you're up on the balcony. How many floors up?
It's the second story.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have like a decent view from the street all the way into the back of the alley.
And then you wound up, what I watched of the surveillance video, you're outside your apartment building. Where were you headed? What happened? And were they just waiting around for you?
So I went to the store, I came back, then it got a lot more aggressive. These guys were not in the alley anymore, they're in the front of where they live, and a few other people that joined them. It was a little crowd almost.
Now you got a group of guys.
Right, so as I'm starting to go back, the guy is saying, "What's up?" Like, what you want to do? I'm like, what? Like, I don't do nothing, I'm going home. He's like, "No, what's up?" And they start coming out from their driveway out to the sidewalk to follow me. Not only that, as he approached closer, and once I had stopped and I could actually focus on him, I noticed that he's now in his waistband gesturing. Like,
got a hand down there, he's trying to intimidate you, or at least reaching, thinking that he's reaching for something, might be in his waistband. At what point did you start thinking, this is getting pretty serious, I might need to reach for my gun?
When they kept approaching and he kept gesturing.
Did you say anything to him?
As they started to approach, I said, "Don't follow me. Leave me alone." Again, like our interaction, I really didn't expect it to be anything that they would come for me for.
Yeah, the interaction you had previously did not indicate that there was going to be violent behavior afterwards.
Not at all.
Okay. And the guy just keeps coming.
Mm-hmm.
And where do you carry your gun? Appendix or on the hip, or where do you keep it?
It's on the hip, more or less, yeah.
Yeah. And at what point, you just told him not to follow you? At what point did you reach for your gun, pull it out, and point it down?
So, as you asked earlier about the gate, I know that I'm coming into the gate and that I'm going to be in a position of more or less vulnerability trying to enter the gate where I can't focus on them. So I said, stop following me. When I saw him gesture is when I reached for my weapon and I pulled it.
He saw your gun and still kept coming.
Yeah,
Does that indicate to you that he's got bad intent?
absolutely.
And now you decide to take aim and fire. What were you thinking at that moment?
That I was going to die.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to die. When I fired it, it did startle me. You know, it was like, kind of like the first time that you ever shot a gun. It's like that feeling again.
And what was their immediate reaction?
When I fired the round, the guy stopped moving, or he stopped coming forward, obviously, and he didn't say anything. The other people that were with him just kind of like came to support him, more or less. Like,
And I understand you hit him once in the leg, and that stopped the assault, stopped the attack that you were facing
Yes.
at the time. Were you thinking about anything else? Were you thinking, do these other guys have guns? What's going to go down now that the shooting has started?
after that, my main concern was to continue to get to safety. So I went to the gate, and I continued to observe. There's a wall as well too that separates the alley from us. So I kind of took a little position behind the wall because I wasn't sure if there'd be any return fire from them or the other guy, him or the other guy.
Yeah. Did you immediately just get inside and get to your house and lock the door?
Went upstairs to the apartment and got inside.
What'd you do then?
Then I immediately called my wife, Angela, to let her know what had happened. My concern was for her to hear from me what had took place and let her know what.
She was not at the apartment at the time of the
No,
shooting?
she was at work.
Were you concerned that if she's coming back, these guys are going to be there and angry and something might happen?
Absolutely. I told her not to come back to the apartment when I spoke to her because I didn't want anything to happen.
And at what point did you call 911?
I called CRT
Yeah.
and then I called 911.
Called CRT first?
Correct.
And called 911?
Yes.
Okay. How did that go? You called CRT number. Take me through that step by step. How was that?
So I was obviously emotionally, kind of broken a little bit, especially after speaking to my wife and giving her the quote unquote bad news. Talking to them definitely put me at ease. It felt like I had somebody there that would be there for me, take care of me.
What did they tell you to do?
They told me to, once I got off the phone, call 911 and let them know what had taken place. I gave them my wife's contact, and that's pretty much all that I remember is, yeah.
Angela, your husband Jeremy had to use his gun to defend his own life right in front of your building. How did you feel when you got that phone call from him?
I was in shock, I guess, and just trying to process everything. I couldn't believe what he had told me.
Where were you when you took the phone call?
I was at work.
And were you able to finish the day? I mean,
No. No, he called and then I was just sitting there. I had some kids with me and I called my boss right away and I was like, I gotta get out of here. Yeah.
What was the next thing you did after you got home, made sure he was okay? How did that go?
Well, I didn't go to our house. I went to my mom's And then I was just trying to decide what to do because he told me not to come, but I just felt like I need to do something. So I got in the car and I drove halfway, and I think that's when I got the call from the CRT to let me know that Andy, or the lawyer, would be calling me.
How did that make you feel at the time?
It made me feel better to know that somebody was taking care of things, because I didn't know what to do. Yeah, so yeah, I felt reassured.
How much interaction did you have with USCCA, with the CRT, following that first phone call?
It was real quick, maybe about 5 minutes or so. Yeah.
Then did you talk to them at all afterwards, or
No.
talk to the attorney? You just started working with your attorney from
Right.
that point on? And tell us a little bit about how that went and how it made you feel dealing with all that stuff.
I think right before Andy had called me, I decided to download this app, the Citizen app, and I actually saw Jeremy getting arrested on the app. So then I just really broke down. I was very upset, and I was just pulled over, and Andy had called me then, and he let me know that he would be taking care of things.
How long was it between the time you got called from CRT and you were able to get in touch with Jeremy or his family?
You know, I actually received the call when I was at a gas station. I was pumping gas, and
You're not supposed to answer your phone while pumping gas. You could cause a fire.
Hey, I saw this one. It said CRT. I was like, I gotta take it, and I took it, and I was like, oh, this is something that's going on right now. I finished pumping gas. They gave me Angela's phone number, and I contacted her, tried to assess the situation there. I then started driving down to the scene, found out that they had already transported him to the police station. I started calling the police station and telling them, hey, I represent Jeremy. He's not making any statements. They're like, I don't know who Jeremy is. I was like, these guys. I got to the police station, had to talk to a watch commander. Apparently, they had transported him to a different police station. I went to the other one and spoke to detectives there and saw Jeremy.
So thanks to Jeremy's call to CRT and CRT's call to the family and to you, you're actually on this case basically at the exact same time he's being taken into custody, maybe even a little bit before. And I spoke to Angela. She said she grabbed an app and was able to watch it live as he was being arrested. And at that point, you're already working on the case, trying to figure out which police station he's at and call people. How does that make you feel?
I was happy to take that call and just jump into action. And
what was he charged with, and what was the eventual disposition of that?
when he was arrested, he was initially booked by the LAPD for attempted murder. When the DAs got the case and actually filed the complaint, they filed felony count 1, assault with a semi-automatic firearm with an enhancement.
Oh yeah, it's California. It's semi-automatics even worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and they added the enhancement for causing great bodily injury. Mm-hmm. And then count 2 was felony criminal threats. And the felony criminal threats was actually because the brother of the alleged victim of count 1, he told police officers that, oh, he told me he was going to shoot me next. And the threats were towards him. So all of the officers that showed up to the scene had no idea that, you know, McCree acted in self-defense. They just knew that someone got shot. Then they ended up, the officers that went over there to the hospital initially tried to speak to the guy that got shot. He was already, you know, given some kind of medication for you know, relieve the pain that he was undergoing. And he was already in a hospital bed, and kind of they were already going to push him through surgery. So he wasn't really too coherent, as from what I could tell in the body cam footage. They then ended up speaking to the younger brother outside of the hospital, and he kind of laid out the initial story of like, oh, this is what we were doing, and Jeremy was acting all aggressively, and he then took out the gun and shot my brother, and you know, he made up this whole other story that they ended up going upon.
Yeah, completely different narrative for the cops, and it's unfair, but it I guess eventually works to your advantage. The smart thing for Jeremy to do is not make a statement until he talks to you. Mm-hmm. But then these other guys who were clearly gonna beat him, kill him, do whatever they were gonna do, they get to tell the cops whatever they want, and now you have to deal with that. What does that feel like for you?
What they ended up initially saying ended up helping the case. They initially spoke to the younger brother there outside of the hospital, and he made a statement there. Then they brought him to the police station and then fully interviewed him. And during those two recorded statements, I found inconsistencies and just things that just weren't making sense.
Now, when you were being, I guess, detained, arrested, being hauled into the police station and going to jail, how long before you started hearing, like, wait a minute, they're thinking about charging me with a crime? I mean, suddenly you're the criminal here?
Yeah.
That's, I'm kind of shrugging as I do that.
Yeah, no, it actually happened as I was waiting in the holding. Nobody was, again, speaking to me, but eventually an officer came in and handed me a paper, and I asked him, what is this? He said, it's your charges. And that's when I saw there in bold, attempted murder, and the bail amount.
Yeah. What was your bail amount?
$2 million.
$2 million.
Yeah.
For the court wants $2 million to release you for defending your own life. How did that make you feel when you see a $2 million number on a charging sheet?
My heart sank as I thought my life is over. I just couldn't believe that at all.
This was a very long process, 2 years, and throughout that time, there was different problems and motions that I had to file with the court. The first being that we, initially we had a preliminary hearing. Prior to the preliminary hearing, I had already served the district attorney's office with an informal discovery request. And I actually laid out in the request specific items of evidence that I wanted, and some of those I didn't receive until after the preliminary hearing. Like the 2 audio recordings of the interviews of the younger brother at the police station and of the guy that got shot. After he was released from the hospital, he eventually went to the police station and gave his full interview there. I didn't get the actual audios of those 2 interviews until after the preliminary hearing, even though I asked for them. I was trying to drag out the case as long as possible because the guy that got shot, he was this prior felon that had 2 prior felonies for robberies, and he had a pending case for being a felon in possession of firearms and ammunition. And I was trying to get that case, for him to get a conviction in that case so that I could use it at trial in Jeremy's case.
What other things did you need to do to make sure that his name was cleared?
We ended up having to file different motions, and I ended up having to, initially I got a private investigator. He helped. I went with him down to the scene of the shooting, did a walkthrough, tried to get a full understanding of what everything looks like there. I then ended up retaining an expert in use of force. Did the same thing with him, did the walkthrough with him. We did the walkthrough with Jeremy as well. He ended up listening to Jeremy and see what his version of the events was. I shared with him some of the discovery. He prepared a report. We then ended up getting the services of animation production company who created an animation to recreate the scene, because the surveillance footage, it shows one perspective that doesn't capture the full event. And it was very, I think, it looked very one-sided because all you see is Jeremy shooting. You don't see what the other guy is doing because there's this tree blocking what he was observing.
So you've got the private investigator. What's a private investigator in LA cost these days?
His bill on the case ended up being almost $8,000.
And then a force science expert, somebody expert in use of force, you're paying this guy to come out, walk through the entire scene, and put together a report. And then you're hiring an animation company. What are we talking about for both time and expense on all of this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the use of force expert, I think his initial retainer amount was maybe for like $5,000, and then he billed hourly based off the hours that he worked. And then the animation company, that cost approximately $20,000.
And the end result is we're looking at an animated recreation of what Jeremy saw from the angle from his perspective.
Yes.
Based on a little bit of what the use of force expert was telling you and what the private investigator was telling you and what you're seeing on this surveillance video obscured by the trees. How valuable is all that in getting his name cleared?
The district attorney's office did not end up knowing yet or seeing the animation, but that was what I was going to use at trial, or attempt to use it at trial. I think it was going to be very important for the jury to be able to see that three individuals were following Jeremy to his home, and they were closing the gap, and they were not listening to him. Obviously, he pulled the firearm out, and they were still advancing. They were reaching into their waistline, and he fires one shot, and you could see in the actual surveillance footage at the bottom of the tree, like you could kind of see the guy that got shot. You could see his feet as he was approaching. And when I ended up reviewing that footage, the surveillance footage with the DA, I even pointed that out, and she tried to tell me like, oh, that could have been someone else's feet. I'm like, no, there was nobody else there. There was only him.
What do you think Jeremy did right throughout this entire incident? Not just the fact that he, called 911 and he didn't make a statement until he got an attorney, but in the actual physical self-defense part of this, what do you think that he did right?
Well, it's important that when you use force, that you don't use more force than necessary to stop the threat. Here, Jeremy, he fired one round. He initially, it appears from the video footage, that he tried to give a verbal command to stop, leave me alone, and then he pulled the trigger, and he only used enough force necessary to stop the threat. He didn't unload, full magazine, insert another one, and keep going. All he did was that one round and stop the threat, and he tried to retreat.
And then called 911 and did everything else right from that point there. When he was talking to me, he said there's a space of about 5 feet between them. To me, I'm feeling like maybe that's allowing folks to get a little bit too close. But in this case, it worked for him. He was able to stop the threat. What advice would you be giving to other folks if they're ever involved in a situation like this?
If it were myself, I would have pulled the trigger as well. If someone's continuing to advance, I'm not going to worry so much about what can happen after. I need to protect myself, and that's the main thing. I'm going to make sure that I keep breathing. That's what Jeremy did, and that's what anybody else should be comfortable doing. But at the same time, again, using only the force that's necessary to stop that threat, and then do the right thing after.
Tell me about how well the USCCA worked for you to get all of these things done, because I was just kind of doing some math in my head. We're upwards of $30,000 that we're just paying other people, not even your time, not even the billable hours that are for you and your firm. Could you have done all of this stuff? I mean, certainly you could have, but how did the USCCA help out with that?
I'll explain to them, hey, I need this expert, I need this animation done. It's going to cost this much, and they approved it. So I never had any issues. They covered whatever I felt was reasonable that I needed for his defense.
Do you feel that district attorneys look at concealed carriers differently or as a problem? I mean, in a situation like this, I can see who the bad guy is, but they're like, no, this good guy actually shot somebody. Maybe that makes this good guy a bad guy now. Or do you feel like the district attorneys are really trying to just make sure that the good guy did everything right?
So in this case, I had a initial meeting with the calendar deputy that was previously assigned to the case and the head deputy. And they were telling me things like, oh, just because this guy has a prior record doesn't mean that your guy could just carry a gun and shoot somebody. And they just weren't listening at all at that he was acting in self-defense. And I already knew that initial meeting was going nowhere. Eventually, I did have a productive meeting with the calendar deputy that eventually ended up handling the case, and the one that I eventually ended up coming to a resolution with. But even that ended up becoming a problem because they kind of ended up going back on the deal that we were initially going to have, which was to have Jeremy placed on military diversion. And they kind of went back on that. They're like, no, we need the conviction. And they're like, he shot somebody. He needs to have some kind of penalty.
He shot somebody in self-defense. It just frustrates me to no end, to hear you say that a district attorney says, well, no, he can't just carry a gun. Yes, we can. We can carry a gun. And if we're forced to shoot somebody, it's not because we wanted to. I mean, do you think they just don't get that, or they just want to get a conviction?
I think they just really wanted to get a conviction here. I don't see anything else telling me otherwise. I think that they really do end up seeing people that carry, firearms for self-defense like differently than others.
I think they lump us all in the same category with criminals. That some guy with a gun or some girl with a gun must be doing something wrong.
Unfortunately, I think so.
Let's talk about the disposition of this case now. There's that misdemeanor charge out there about carrying a gun, and you talked about the military aspect because Jeremy is a veteran. And what happened all the way through this, and what I want to let people know is that, did he plead guilty to this misdemeanor, and USCIC was still there to help out, and his USCCA member benefits still helped him out, despite the fact that there was a misdemeanor charge he still got hung with?
Yeah, so I guess right prior to, reaching the disposition, the district attorney's office did put on the record that they could not succeed at trial with the first two counts, which were the felony counts, because there was a legit self-defense argument to be made, and that's on the record. Then they wanted this conviction. I really disagree with. I didn't necessarily like that he had to plead to this. He pled no contest to carrying a loaded firearm without a permit, but at the time that he was carrying that firearm without a permit, it was pre-Bruin, so that actual CCW licensing law and process was found to be unconstitutional. But it was either that or they wanted to just continue with the felony counts, and they initially wanted 9 years state prison for this.
Wow. And through it all, what was the end disposition of the misdemeanor count of carrying without a permit?
So it was no contest, a plea to that, and no jail time. It was, I think, 25 hours of community service that he's going to have to do, and a safety firearm class.
They dropped the felony charges, left you with misdemeanor charges. How long before everything was cleared up and you were like, I'm feeling good about this?
2 years.
Over entire
2
years.
Yeah.
Of how was that?
Hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really painful event to have occur in your mind over and over and really never feel like it was going to end. And also looking at facing several years in prison for saving my life, then my life ending in prison was all that I could think of. And I was very adamant to just have my truth be told.
This man felt something none of us ever want to feel. Jeremy McCree was facing 9 years in state prison just for defending himself against 3 bad guys. He only shot when he absolutely had to. He called 911. He even helped the police gather evidence. Yet he was still called an attempted murderer. Yet his wife still had to watch him get arrested. Yet he still spent 2 years of his life in and out of court. So I want you to imagine this. What if you find yourself wondering what's going to happen next? Sure, the details might look a little different, but what if you're actually forced to defend yourself or your loved ones? What if you say something to the police that you shouldn't have? What if you don't have the resources to fight for your innocence? When it seemed like the whole world was against him, Jeremy had help because of his USCCA membership. Within minutes of calling the USCCA, the 24/7 critical response team had already contacted an attorney and had already called Jeremy's wife to reassure her that help was literally on the way to the jail where Jeremy was being held. So here's my question for you. Will you have help when that moment comes? Or will you and your loved ones be on your own? A membership with the U.S. Concealed Carry Association gives you access to over $3,600 worth of self-defense education and training materials, depending on the level you choose. And every membership comes with access to self-defense liability insurance in case you ever need monetary resources to defend yourself in court. That means you are mentally, physically, and legally prepared for any threat you might face. And the best part? Your self-defense liability insurance benefits begin the moment you join, and you'll have instant access to the education and training resources to improve your self-defense skills. Then you get something no one can put a price on. You get peace of mind knowing you're completely prepared to protect yourself and the people you love. To learn more about the USCCA and activate your membership today, click the link below this video. You'll even find an exclusive bonus package just for people who join today. Just hurry, this bonus package won't last forever. So click the link below and arm yourself with a USCCA membership.
Insurance has been purchased by the USCCA and is one of the benefits of membership in the USCCA. Coverage and benefits are subject to the terms, conditions, and exclusions of the insurance policy issued to the USCCA. Every USCCA member is an additional insured on that policy. Information provided herein is for informational purposes and is not intended to be a representation of coverage that may exist in any particular situation. USCCA membership is not available to residents of New Jersey, New York, or Washington State. Contact Delta Defense's customer engagement team at 1-800-674-9779 with any questions. Delta Defense LLC provides sales, marketing, operations, and administrative support services to the USCCA and is a licensed insurance agency in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, with its principal office in West Bend, Wisconsin. Delta Defense LLC does business as Delta Defense Insurance Services in California. California license number 0M34093.